everybody. Welcome to What's on My Mind. I'm your host, Victoria Robinson. I'm really excited about my guest today, Mr. Nate Larkin, who started and founded a ministry called Samson's Society many years ago. He's going to tell you all about it. When we are living in a sexually saturated society as we are today, the things we need to talk about, we're going to go there, is pornography, sex trafficking, and the sex industry. And that's what Nate's going to bring. He's going to bring a fresh look for maybe some of you that have never realized how bad it really is. And I'm not just talking about all the secular people and all the heathens. Friends, I'm talking about what's going on in the church today, amongst church leaders and elders and deacons. This is an epidemic. Talk about an epidemic and pandemic that we just went through. This is one that we need to start paying attention to, and we need to protect our children from this as well. I've been doing a lecture called Raising Your Children in a Sexually Saturated Society for a couple decades now, because parents don't know what to do. And they're giving their kids these things when they're as young as 8 and 9 years old, and then they have easy access to the sex trade, to pornography. So I don't want to keep talking to you about this stuff. I want you to hear from the experts. So I want you to help me welcome Mr. Nate Larkin. Hello, Nate.
Well, hello. It's so awesome to be here with you, Victoria. I've been looking forward to this, although I was kind of hoping it was an audio podcast. I'm a little taken aback the fact that we got video going here. I've got a face.
Oh no, we are audio and video, Nate. We do the whole thing here.
All right. Okay.
Presents. They're Ron Strand, our producer, and Marisa. They're big time. Well, Nate, I'm so excited to have you because one of the things I'm sure you heard my introduction of what I was talking about. This is one of those subjects that is not just near and dear to my heart because of the damage I've seen it do to people and young children, because I'm going into schools talking about the sex issue. And I have a lecture called How to Wait. I don't say I don't until I do. And I talk to these young people about why they need to stay away from even the soft porn. And these young guys are telling me things like, well, there's nothing wrong with me looking at this stuff. I'm like, yes, there is. It's affecting your brain. So Nate, tell us about yourself and about Samson's Society.
Well, okay, good. Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to. I got to tell you though, Victoria, if you had told me years ago when I was a young guy, the golden boy in our little non-denominational denomination, headed for ministry, that one day I would be the porn guy, I would, first of all, I would have been just absolutely mortified at the thought. And I would have thought you were crazy because, I was a good kid and I loved Jesus. I grew up in a Christian home. However, I've got to tell you that in our home, my parents never talked about sex. And we never talked about it at church, which in itself sent a very strong message.
Yep.
This is kind of the unmentionable. So it kind of accumulated. There was some shame around it, unspoken, but I kind of got this message. So nobody warned me. Nobody ever told me about porn. Nobody warned me that porn even existed.
Wow.
Nate, nobody.
That's interesting because when I say to pastors, when you don't address the abortion issue and you've got people sitting in your churches who've had abortions, they internalize that shame. So you're saying when pastors aren't addressing sex and porn or these different kinds of addictions, it's sending the same message.
Right. Yeah. All I know, well, first of all, when puberty hit, I began, of course, naturally to develop some thoughts and appetites that were brand new to me and confusing. And when I saw porn for the first time, I was taken completely by surprise. Nobody warned me that every boy eventually sees porn. Nobody told me that every boy instinctively likes porn because it depicts something we're wired by God to want.
Right.
I knew it was bad, but I didn't know why it was bad. And these days, as you know, we've got to make the case to young folks that porn is actually harmful. That's no longer a given. And we could spend an hour on the topic. There are all kinds of reasons that make porn dangerous. And even, post-Christian societies are ahead of us now in Europe, they're already enacting legislation to protect young people against pornography in a way that we aren't yet in the U.S.
Wow. So Nate,
But
how did you develop such a passion for this subject? You said that you'd have never thought you'd be the guy or the young
yeah,
with the porn problem. When you saw it, just like, I tell young women and young men, don't wait until you're in the back seat of a car to make a choice about whether you're going to have
yeah,
sex
yeah,
with your marriage.
sure,
Because you're going to think, well, no, I won't do that. I'm a good girl. But you're not going
yeah,
to realize as well, Nate, that it feels good that you're with that
yeah,
boy that's cute and you like that. So it's kind of
yeah,
like the porn issue. That's what I'm hearing you say. There's so many correlations.
sure, absolutely. And we do know this, that addiction of all types, is rooted in trauma. It's trauma that makes us vulnerable to any kind of maladaptive coping mechanism that helps us deal with unwanted feelings, unwanted thoughts. So there was a lot of trauma in my childhood as well. So, my mother was mentally ill and then committed suicide when I was young, and then it was
Oh,
just
wow.
tumultuous at home. So, kind of in that backdrop, I was introduced to softcore pornography. I saw my first Playboy magazine on a news rack. And even though I hadn't looked inside the magazine, I was just so mesmerized by the image. It struck something so deep.
Nate,
And
would
I,
you do me a favor? Will you give the
yeah,
definition of what soft porn is? Because some people are going, "What's he talking about?" There's soft porn and there's hard porn. What does that mean? Will you give
yeah,
that
yeah,
definition of what you mean by that?
sure. Well, back in the day, so softcore porn is essentially it's nudity without explicit sexual contact.
Oh,
Hardcore porn is when there's actually a depiction of the sexual act of any kind. And these days, the pornographers are exploring every possible, flavor of sexual behavior and
yeah.
every perversion out there. But for me, it was what would today actually the kind of stuff that today would go on broadcast television back then was classified as pornography. We understood that it was, it was intended entirely for arousal and titillation. At any rate, all I know is I felt ashamed of having seen it. I felt guilty for having liked it,
Mm-hmm.
but I had no place to take either of those feelings. So I did what guilt does. I lied. I did what shame does. I hid. I concealed from everybody that I had even a passing interest in pornography, and worked very hard at polishing my image to myself and to others as the person who certainly was above that kind of thing.
And did it go from your childhood when you were a young boy into your adulthood, Nate?
Oh, absolutely. I had the fascination that's really kind of common in adolescence among young boys with pornography, although I again kept it concealed. Nobody in the high school where I was the good Christian kid, where I was Saint Nate, where the guy who started the Bible club, nobody would have suspected that Nate had an interest in porn because I concealed it that well.
Right.
On into college, where I kind of drew the conclusion in college. I didn't go to a Christian college. I thought, well, maybe these puritanical ideas of mine are outdated and maybe I need to loosen up a little bit. I really need sex education. There's really nothing wrong with it. I told myself that pornography was preparation for marriage.
I've heard that, Nate. I've heard that from young men that will tell me, why should I wait until I'm getting married? I want to practice before I marry my wife so I can be a good lover for her. And I tell them, trust me, buddy, God made your body and a woman's body different for a reason. It'll fit together just fine. And you can have a great time on your honeymoon figuring it out. You don't need to practice.
Yeah, yeah.
But these are the lies they are telling themselves.
Sure. Well, I didn't know that pornography was actually poisoning my marriage, that it was
Mm,
creating expectations for marriage and objectification of the female form,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, because nobody looks like that naked, Nate.
exactly.
It's called
Exactly. So,
airbrushing.
It was setting expectations that no woman on the planet would ever be able to fulfill.
Right. Then
And
she
I
walks
married.
out. Then she walks out of the bathroom on the wedding
Yeah,
night. She's all dolled up, and he's going, "Wait, what?" So
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So it was. I thought that marriage. I banked on marriage as the thing that would solve my porn problem because I
Mhm.
always felt ashamed of it. Even when I was rationalizing that behavior privately, I never disclosed it publicly because inside I knew it was wrong, and I
Yeah.
thought marriage is going to save it, and that didn't work. If anything, the problem metastasized over time, and it's not. So then I decided pornography is my best protection against adultery.
Right.
Okay. Because I love my wife and I never am going to be unfaithful to this woman. And pornography is not infidelity and it's not a real person. So this actually, I'm actually doing her a favor by meeting my sexual needs without burdening her. So
Okay.
I've done
Hold
some
on, Nate.
massive rationalizations.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Nate. Okay, I'm going to keep interrupting you at certain times because
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about this stuff because I've been involved in this industry,
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you will, teaching young people about abstinence and why they should make
Yeah.
healthier.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure the audience hears what you're saying because I've had women ask me, Victoria, my husband likes to look at porn and he pleasures himself while he's looking at
Yeah.
porn. But that's not cheating, right? I'm like, wait, what? Your husband is fantasizing about other women,
Yeah.
pleasuring himself, and you don't think that's cheating? That's how I don't get that, Nate. Are a lot of
Yeah.
women convinced by their husbands? Are they that insecure? What explain that a little bit, Nate, to the
Well,
audience?
that's where the culture has gone. The culture has made it normative, and the culture has said that because sex in itself is a good thing, and it is, and
Yes, it
because
is.
sexual expression is healthy, that any sexual experimentation is in itself healthy.
Well, God created sex. Sex is awesome.
Right, exactly.
Different kinds of marriage.
All I do know is that first of all, I was allowing pornographers to define beauty for me and
Mm, good.
to create my arousal template. You
Wow,
see what I'm
that's good.
saying?
Yeah, that's really good.
Now, I married a beautiful woman. Now, Allie is 10 years older than I am. So she is not the ideal as defined by the pornography industry.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Well, what is it? Because by the time you're 25, you're washed up pretty much in
Okay.
pornography.
Yeah. And she very quickly was a mom. Okay. So she went through all of those physical changes and emotional changes.
Sure.
Meanwhile, I'm allowing the pornographers to define beauty for me on a daily basis
Wow,
and
that's good.
to set and reinforce my arousal template. So what happened to me was it blinded me to the beauty of my wife.
Mm,
And
that's
here's the tragedy. I am the biggest mirror in Allie's life. She looks to me for affirmation that she is what she is, that she is beautiful and desirable, that lovely. But I was oblivious back in the days. All I knew was that if we had to go someplace, she took forever in the bathroom. And then when she came, okay, and then when she came out, I now see that when she comes, when ready to go, she comes out and she kind of presents herself without saying anything. And she wants a verdict.
right.
Do I look good? Right? And I would bang on my watch and say, we're late.
Right.
Right? I wasn't helping my wife's self-concept at all. I wasn't appreciating her beauty at all. And I was being led down the garden path by the pornographers who were also grooming me to take me across the flesh line into actual physical infidelity.
Yep.
And that was something I knew I would never do. By the time it happened, I was a pastor. By the time it happened, I had 3 kids. I love my wife. There's no way in the world I'm ever going to do that.
This is what you're telling yourself, Nate?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. The same way that you were telling yourself when you were a young man, there's nothing wrong with me. All guys,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
normal.
Sure. Until,
Wow.
a fateful Christmas Eve of all nights, when I'm on my way to get the church set up for a candlelight service in Fort Lauderdale. Just as it starts to rain, I see, a woman walking along the sidewalk. I do what I think is the chivalrous thing and pull over to offer her a ride out of the rain. I don't know what she's doing until she's in the car and propositioning me. And at that point, the conditioning set in. I had seen some version of that scenario so many times,
right,
that my reaction was actually automatic. And at that point, Victoria, what's tragic as I look back on it is I didn't see the person in the car with me. It never occurred to me to wonder what would possess a young lady to be out on the street on Christmas Eve offering herself to strangers.
Wow.
I didn't wonder whether she had a family, where her parents were, whether she had a boyfriend or a husband or children. Never even thought she might have a pimp. I didn't even wonder I didn't wonder what her name was. Because at that point, I had so objectified women that so the conditioning kicked in.
So Nate,
yeah.
Sorry, Nate, but okay. So you're up to that point. It's Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And you're driving and you pick up what you now find, we know the prostitute. Right. But had you not had that porn, let's make it clear, Nate, had you not had that porn addiction, and as you keep saying, conditioned yourself to be where you were prime real estate. Nate, you were prime for this to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You may have invited her to church instead.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But because of your brain and your heart and the lust being primed all those years up to this point, it was easy to cross that line.
Absolutely. It was absolutely automatic. Yeah.
Which is the danger, Nate, when men start thinking soft porn is okay. And it doesn't mean, young men, if you've looked at a Victoria's Secret magazine, oh my gosh, that means you're going to hire a prostitute. But it does mean you're at a higher risk, right, Nate? And I'm asking you, you're the expert, but it seems common sense would tell me, if you're starting to look at Victoria's Secret or the soft porn, it's going to take you down. It's kind of like that's what Satan does, doesn't he? He just puts that little carrot and then he's reeling you in.
Yeah, I did actually, skip a piece of the story. There was actually a progression from soft porn to hard porn. I was actually introduced to hard porn, ironically, in seminary by the seminary itself, who took seminarians and their wives. My wife was with me into New York City. This is in the late 70s, on a tour of Times Square so that we could see for ourselves how women are exploited by the sex business. That's when I saw my
Wait, Nate, you just say what I think you said.
Yeah.
Seminary showed you and your wives.
Yeah.
Hardcore pornography, people having sex.
Yeah. Or, it's the same mistake, by the way, that was made by medical schools back in those days, who their idea was they would desensitize male doctors to the female form by subjecting them to porn marathons, lock them into a building for the weekend. And if I could tell you how many doctors I have met, how many doctors I know,
oh my gosh,
who have lived with the fallout from that exposure, it's insane.
I have never heard such a thing, and I can guarantee you, I've heard a lot in my work. So if I haven't heard that, I can guarantee you the majority of people watching, except maybe these doctors, are going, what? Like I am.
Yeah, that's not being done anymore, but that was in vogue for a while.
Why did they stop doing it, Nate? Did they catch on? Did they figure it out, how dangerous it was?
I don't know. All I know that there is no shortage in the fellowships of recovering sex addicts. There's no shortage of professional people. There's no shortage of, highly intelligent, and otherwise highly moral, highly educated, very successful people, but ensnared by this insidious thing. So,
Nate, would you say that the sex industry, sex pornography, all of this, the addiction to it, is like a disease like alcoholism?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Uh,
what,
in
how,
fact, we
go ahead.
yeah, we do know now, research, we do know that pornography, the arousal from pornography, affects the same pleasure centers in the brain that cocaine does.
Yeah, I read
And
that in a book called Hooked. Have you heard of
yeah,
that book, Hooked, Nate? Yeah, it blew my
yeah,
mind. The chemicals in the brain affect the men the same way. And I've even read in that book that it's more difficult to break free of pornography addiction than crack cocaine.
I've had guys who've had both addictions who tell me the same thing, that getting off crack was a lot easier than getting off porn.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing, over time it actually changes the brain in the same
Right.
way that cocaine does. We can actually see it now on brain scans. This is not just, yes, it is a spiritual thing, but it is also a physiological thing. And recovery requires healing.
Yeah.
And healing, most of the time, is progressive.
And does the healing have to go back to the trauma, Nate, that got you there in the first place?
Eventually, that's where that is where it will go. You've got to have some abstinence in the beginning in order to even get to the trauma. You don't go to the trauma in order to stop the behavior. You got to stop the behavior, and you need support and help in order to stop the behavior.
Right.
In order to think and actually feel straight, get your head on straight enough now with the help of others to go back and find out what it is. What is it I'm running from? Where did I get off track? Yeah.
Nate, I've heard from friends, my female friends who are married to men, and even
Yeah.
a couple of male friends that I know that I've been friends with for years that have this addiction
Yeah.
and that struggle with masturbation because they're
Mhm.
masturbating sometimes up to 6 more times a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, they're not able to perform in the bedroom with their wives, and they love
Right.
their wives. They
Yeah.
want
Right.
to be able to perform. What is the success, Nate, of someone in that kind of condition who is
Yeah.
so deep into the hardcore, who's crossed the line as you
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
What's the percentage of helping people to get out of that, Nate? Because you've already said and agreed, we both agreed that, and men have told you that it was easier to get off of crack than porn addiction.
Right. Yeah.
How do people get healed, Nate, from this? Because it's rampant amongst our society today.
First of all, I'm convinced that there is no solo way out.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I spent years applying all of my willpower, and I'm a strong-willed person, all of my dedication. I spent years begging God for a private solution to my private problem.
Yeah.
Not understanding why in the world he wouldn't deliver that deliverance to me. He knew how much I hated the sin. Why wouldn't he take it away? I since have come to believe he uses even our brokenness and our sin to bring about his redemptive purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest problem was my isolation, my shame-driven isolation. I did not know how to connect with anybody. So isolated by shame, which began early, that although I was well known, nobody knew me.
Ooh, that's good.
I couldn't therefore really function as a member of the body of Christ because I couldn't be honest in any relationship. I couldn't be fully transparent or vulnerable anywhere, which made me unreliable as a friend, as a coworker, as a husband, because it was always a part of me in reserve. And it was there, I was intimidated into silence, I believe, by, if we're going to get religious now, by our ancient enemy. Okay. I really do believe that I had been sidelined.
Yeah.
I lived with this deep shame, knowing what I was doing. I despised my own hypocrisy. I was never cavalier about this. And I knew that it disqualified me from usefulness. It caused me to abandon the ministry. I only lasted 5 years in the ministry. I was never caught, but I was so disheartened and so desperate by my inability to conquer this obsession.
Wow. So you felt like a fraud.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
then, Nate, what you did instead of telling the truth and opening up, because the enemy wants us to stay in
Yeah.
isolation with our
Yeah.
sin. That's how he keeps us in
Yeah. Yeah.
bondage. We not to look for help. That's why we
Yeah.
confess our sins to one
Sure.
another. So you left the ministry, probably gave other excuses, but you knew the real
Right.
reason was I'm a fraud. I can't kick this habit.
Right. I pled burnout. And, it wasn't crazy for me to do that because in the churches that I was a part of, and this was our total social network, this was our social support, I saw what happened to guys who either were caught in a sexual transgression
All
or
right.
took our rhetoric about grace at face value and actually confessed a sexual sin. I saw what happened. In fact, I participated in the so-called disciplining of those men sometimes. If I
Wow.
wasn't,
Whoa, 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 Nate. Okay.
yeah,
Mind blown. So you're saying men would get caught in these addictions, adultery,
yeah,
pornography, whatever, and you'd be
sure,
right
sure,
there
sure, sure.
going, you're a sinner. This is what you need to do. Knowing the whole time you're walking out, going into your closet
Yeah.
or driving down that street, picking up that chick when the rain's going.
If I wasn't throwing the rocks at those guys, I was holding the coats for those who were.
Wow,
So,
Nate. And this is what's happening. It's not like you're, an isolated case. This is what's
right.
happening every day. I have a particular person that I've known for many, many years. And it seems like when he felt he could confess his sin of this
Yeah,
addiction,
sure.
we were always friends, talked
Yeah,
a lot more. But as soon as it seems to me anyway, which makes sense now, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to help him get some help. I want to let him know it doesn't
yeah,
matter what you've done. I still care about you. I'm loyal to my friends. He dropped off the face of the earth.
yeah, yeah.
Doesn't want to talk to me anymore.
Hmm.
It's the shame, isn't it?
Oh,
Part of it.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's a very hard place to live, and it
How do
all.
they get out of it, Nate? What do they do? What's the first step they need to do? Recognize they have a problem? To
Yeah,
give us the step program, because there are going to be
sure.
men watching, and you know it as well as I knew that there's, I don't know what the numbers are. I know 1 out of
Yeah,
3 or 4 people has had an abortion or participated in an abortion in
yeah.
this country. I know what about abortion. I don't know how many people are addicted to pornography. So answer that question. And then number 2,
Oh,
they're going to be watching this, or their wives are going to be watching, wondering, how do I help my husband? Because I'm ready to sign divorce papers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, let's just be clear. The statistics are unreliable just because it's so difficult for people to honestly answer a survey question.
Exactly.
However, yeah, probably the most reliable of surveys that show within the church. First of all, let's understand that porn addiction within the church is essentially at the same rate as porn addiction outside the church. We would like to think it's lower.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
If anything, it might be higher. Here's an interesting thing. Do you know where porn use per capita is highest in the world? Which country and which state? Porn use per capita, the highest country is Saudi Arabia.
Wow, that makes sense.
The highest state is Utah.
Utah,
Absolutely.
which is a very religious state.
Yes, right. So the more squeaky clean we are, and the higher the penalty for vulnerability, the deeper it drives the problem. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I'm having a little moment over and over again.
Yeah. Now, let's remember this. When you think back over the story of Jesus' ministry in the New Testament, think about how he treated the sexually broken, as a contrast to how they were treated by the religious authorities of the day. Jesus was always so unfailingly kind to the sexually broken.
Yeah.
And they never heard a hint of condemnation from him. Even the woman at the well, where he just kind of laid out for her crazy sexual past, she to her, it felt so freeing that as soon as she got back to the city, she said, "You've got to come hear the guy who told me everything I ever did." So here's the thing. I believe, I'm convinced that there is no solo way out of this addiction. For one thing, it's driven by an appetite for intimacy, a God-given appetite for intimacy. We are made to connect. We are
Right.
social to the very core. And the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yep.
Okay? Porn offers us an imaginary connection, an artificial connection with an imaginary person,
Mm-hmm.
which, if we accept it, begins at that moment to erode our capacity to create and sustain a real relationship with an actual person, which, by the way, which is why the rate of erectile dysfunction these days among males 18 to 35, which historically was at 2%. Now, since the advent of internet pornography and the iPhone, stands, I kid you not, at 30%.
Wow.
And that is a result that's been replicated multiple times internationally in huge studies, samples of more than 35,000 people.
That reminds me of a couple that I knew, Nate, and they're since now divorced, unfortunately,
Right.
but they were good friends. This was many years ago, and
Yeah.
he had an addiction to porn, and he had since he was a teenage boy. And
Right.
so he truly did love my friend. He really did. And they had a little girl. He wanted to make the marriage work, but he could not be satisfied unless he was masturbating.
Yeah.
And he said nothing. And when they were together, he couldn't have sex. I mean,
Yeah.
of course he did at least once. They have a dog,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
all in all, they did not have a healthy sex life. She didn't
Right.
turn him on. She didn't get him aroused like the porn did. So that's what you're saying. These men that are not able to perform for their women.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to get real personal here, Nate.
Yeah.
And I won't, let's see, how am I going to say this? I can remember in a relationship many, many, many years ago that I was in,
Mm-hmm.
that the person I was with,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give him away, but the person that I was with just surprised me with porn, and
Yeah.
it was on.
Yeah.
I remember feeling so disgusted
Uh-huh.
and so uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and he, of course, was trying to convince me this was normal and this is
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
and this will.
Yeah.
And so I thought something was wrong with me
Uh-huh.
because I wasn't. It felt so wrong.
Yeah.
Thank God I got out of that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is also something that men are trying to engage their women in. Is that why we're seeing a rise with women in porn?
That's part of it, sure. And also, women, I think even more than men, are wired for connection.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%.
Right? Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And as the attention of the men has been hijacked by pornography, women now look, the feminine mystique is gone. By the time he's 15 years old, the typical male has seen, thousands of naked women.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, that is one of the most pernicious properties of pornography. It is pornography now with this, when there's millions of videos uploaded that are available, to any unsupervised 4-year-old. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's insane.
Pornography is conditioning us to novelty. So that to be aroused, it's this endless succession of images. It's one after another after another. It's video after video after video. Now, even if as a young man, I finally meet the most beautiful girl in the world and we marry, she's only one girl.
Right.
And I am conditioned to novelty. Now, that's the bad news. Let me tell you the good news. The good news is that God created us with an amazing self-healing brain.
Yeah.
We create neurons and neural pathways till the day we die. And it is possible for the brain to heal. Now, it requires support. It requires connection. But
so is that uncomfortable? Is that something, Nate? So if a man came to you and he says, I've been addicted to porn for years. It's destroyed relationships I've been in.
Sure.
I can't connect with a woman. I don't want to live this way. I'm masturbating several times a day because I think also, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, men can look at porn, be pleasured by women without any responsibility because
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
they no commitment, no responsibility there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which again is that vicious cycle of not connecting. So if they come to you, is one of the things that you're going to advise them to do is whether you like it or not, or it feels comfortable, you've got to start connecting with people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, and it begins with, in Samson society, what we learn and what we practice is non-sexual intimacy.
Mm. And what does that
Okay.
look like, Nate?
It means I can get in a room with other guys and I can talk absolutely honestly with no filters at all about not only what I've done, but what I think and what I feel. I can bring my real self into the room. And here's the thing, it took me a while when I first started attending meetings. Like, first of all, when I got sexually sober in 12-step recovery. And I only went there after being caught by my wife. And that's the typical story. 4 out of 5 guys who seek help for sexually compulsive behavior only do so after receiving an ultimatum from a wife or a girlfriend.
Wow. Wow.
That's the gift my wife gave me.
Yeah. And the
My
gift
wife,
that God gave you, Nate, is letting her catch you.
right, exactly, exactly. And then she had the fortitude to say, and she really, at this point, we were 20 years into marriage, and pornography had taken me away from her emotionally. She felt emotionally abandoned. Uh, I was trying to be, the dutiful husband, but I was no longer emotionally connected to her. She was feeling very alone. And then
Nate, did she think you were having an affair? What were her thoughts?
no, she
Did she
was
have a
certain.
suspicion about porn? What did Allie think?
I had confessed to her at one point early on a porn problem,
Okay.
uh, and had experienced the relief that comes from confession. That was when we were about, it was a little after seminary, so it was about 6 years in.
But your behavior didn't change.
Well, it did for a while. I experienced the relief that comes from confession, but then so Allie then volunteered to be my accountability partner. And she said, whenever you're struggled, you can talk to me. And I thought, this is the perfect solution. Nobody else ever has to know. What I didn't understand and what Allie didn't understand was she had volunteered for a job that God didn't build her to do.
I was about to say, I'm sitting here going, oh, I don't think that's good.
Because she could never hear a confession like that completely objectively. It was
Of course
always a reflection on her own desirability. I could tell that it hurt her. So eventually I stopped telling her. She assumed it's because we'd made it through. We were done.
Oh, wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I kept it hidden much longer, and then it got worse. Then it got into prostitution.
Nate, tell us how Allie found out. How'd she catch you?
Well, we had made the move from South Florida. We'd done what the AAers called the geographic cure.
Oh.
Okay. We'd moved to a whole nother state. We'd made a new start. We were in a new town. We started a new church. I started a new business, and for a time the obsession lifted, and Allie and I are holding hands and hanging curtains and buying furniture and walking to church, and we're kids again. And I thought, wow, all that time the problem was Florida. See, yeah. That's the common. But then we started running out of money, and when that happened, I started to get scared. And fear is one of those feelings that I don't do very well. And when I started to get scared, I reached for the only fear medication I'd ever used. I'd use porn to medicate fear, loneliness, anger, sadness, right? I didn't know how to admit or deal with any of those feelings. So when I started to get scared one night after Allie had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed, went back into the office, fired up the computer, and started downloading porn. And at some point that night, she walked in on me. I didn't even see her.
Wow. Well, Nate, I'm going to hold that because
Yeah.
I want to end this part of the show
Okay.
with that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a part 2. So if you'll hang on, I want you to tell the rest of that story and what happened from there. So hang on there. Don't go anywhere, Nate. You guys, this is such a eye-opening conversation for me. I hope it is for you. I want to make sure that we get more information while we have Nate, because this guy knows what he's talking about. He's lived through it. He's come on the other side, and I want you to hear about that too. So thank you for watching this week's episode of What's on My Mind. That's what was on my mind this week. And be sure to tune in next week for part 2 with Mr. Nate Larkin, the founder of Samson Society.